You're listening to Data Center Therapy. Please take a number, and an engineer will be right with you.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Data Center Therapy, a podcast from Ivoxy Consulting that talks all things IT with a healthy dose of empathy. I'm your host, Matt Multipath Yeti, and alongside me is my co-host, Matt Cozzolino.
I file-based today?
Matt file-based because it's the Cozzolino. You snuck that in on me. Well, each episode, in addition to our mistakes, we dive into the wide range of technologies that make up this beautiful sandbox called IT that we all play in. All right, let's jump right into our topic, Mr. Cozzolino. We have had these conversations quite a bit, personally, privately, professionally, and it's kind of an ongoing, I don't know if debate is even required in this sense, right? But it's just kind of a, what's your favorite flavor of yogurt kind of thing in a way,
kind of,
right?
Let me ask you, what's your favorite storage protocol?
Flavor of yogurt?
Yes.
My favorite storage protocol. It's interesting. To go back in my journey, I really first got heavily into virtualization, in 2009. Now, prior to that, I worked at a hospital in New York, and we had a virtual environment. And I remember when vMotion came around, and it was mind-blowing, and it was so cool.
vMotion is awesome.
We used Fiber Channel.
Yep.
But I was still on the network side of things at that point in my career, or at least as far as my title and my team went, right?
Okay.
Even though I would work with the system guys all the time. So all that to say, I didn't really touch that environment much at that point.
Okay.
So going back 10 years, I would have said NFS only because we started with NFS. Our first virtual cluster at my last job, when we were finally virtualized, much to the chagrin of my boss at the time, we went 10 gig. We went whole hog. This is like 2010.
Okay.
We were 10 gig. And so at the recommendation of one of Ivoxy's engineers, you won't believe it, Chris Crow, who worked with us, it was NFS. And I would say... I would say to this day that probably holds. We can dive into that deeper, but that's a real long-winded answer to your question.
Yeah.
How about you?
I usually lean towards NFS. I think you could distill that question down and ask it more along the lines of, do you prefer a file-based storage or a block-based storage? Right? Because Fiber Channel and iSCSI is going to be block-based.
Yeah, but I mean, are you preferring block-based because it's block and file-based because it's file, or... It's really about how you use it that dictates which one you want. Not because, I think block is superior to file because. Mm-hmm. I think, right?
Yeah. That's kind of the question that I see most people struggling with is there's I think some design considerations that go along with that. I lean towards NFS because there's, in my opinion, less that I have to make the hypervisor do, and I get a little more flexibility out of it.
Well, that's true. Yeah, right? And I think from a network standpoint, it's a little less. I won't say finicky. It's got fewer requirements from a networking side. NFS, and we're not talking about PNFS, at least not right now. But your typical NFS that you see out there is NFS v3. Even today, that's what you're going to see. It is not a multi-path protocol. It's file-based. It's more or less a Linux version of Microsoft's SMB. I mean, that's not
exactly
accurate. That's not exactly true, but
so
it's easy.
The comparison holds true, though, right? You've got NFS, you've got CIFS. They're both file shares. They're both presenting that file storage. You hit on the thing that a lot of times when I have conversations with customers, it's the discussion of where do you build in the redundancy, and NFS gives you a lot easier way to connect to a storage. You just have to, here's this target, there's where I'm connecting, and you're done.
It's an export.
Right, but you have to then worry more about your pathing and your redundancy and how you're connected. Because
right, you still have to think about where my redundancy lies, where with iSCSI, when you design the network and the connectivity, you actually have to specifically dedicate and call out paths.
Right.
And at that point, you already have built in that redundancy, so you know it's there.
Right. That's the one I always come back to is I let iSCSI or Fiber Channel or whatever my storage protocol, my actual storage protocol, my block-based storage, it's the one that deals with the redundant connectivity to the thing because I set up fabric A, fabric B, I set up connection A, connection B. Whereas with storage, with NFS, I have to then worry about it at the network level. Yeah. I have to build an LACP connection. I have to do link failover at networking at the network level. So it solves the same problems. You just have to push it somewhere else, right?
And it does, even though I said NFS is my favorite, it's going to sound like a lot of the things that come out of my mouth are in favor of iSCSI at this point. And I might have gotten there where I feel more comfortable pulling a path down on an iSCSI storage mount than I would necessarily yanking a switch backing an NFS data store.
Right, because you see stuff like you can go into your iSCSI initiator on ESX and take a look at the pathing for this LUN and see that there is 6, 7, 8, or I guess usually like 4, 6, 8 paths to said LUN, right?
Yep.
With NSS or with NFS, you just have that one mount, one point. Am I connected? I better be. I hope these switches are redundant, right?
Right. Exactly. So, and then there's the fact that with block, you've got the host handling the file system.
Right.
And we're talking specifically at vSphere and ESXi, where it's VMFS right now, VMFS 6. Where if it's NFS, the filer handles it. That's dealing with the file system. The thin provisioning displays all the way back to the host. Where with iSCSI,
you have to recover those empty blocks, and
right. So there's trade-offs. But what's weird is a lot of times when I talk with my customers, they're asking me what's better. That's an almost impossible question to answer.
What kind of servers do you like? I don't really care. Does it have a CPU? Does it have memory?
Right. And really, it's a lot of times they ask it from a performance standpoint. And we'll get into it, but we can talk about it now. The jumbo frame debate, the great jumbo frame debate, 1500 versus 9000. I think, from my experience and all my reading, research, and real-world experience, you could run 100 tests, and 51 of them will favor jumbo frames, and 49 of them will favor standard frame size, 1500 byte MTU.
Right.
At that point, all it really does is have a potential for your network guy missed one of the switches in the path, and now you're down.
Right. Though that's interesting. I feel like it's come full circle. Like when I started in virtualization, it was all 1 gig connectivity, and to get that extra bit of performance, you configure the jumbo frames, and then 10 gig came along, and now you know what? This 10 gig is performant enough, and I don't have to.
And it had to do with switch CPU capacity a lot of times in the 1 gig era also, right?
Yeah. There's a whole lot of reasons, right? And we've marched everything forward, and now we've
good enough, Governor.
We hit that point where we don't need those jumbo frames. We don't need that MTU 9000 to carry that storage protocol because there's enough bandwidth to handle it. But now we're doing things like NSX, and I've got an overlay, and now I need it for yet another different reason. So we're back to, if I'm going to build an environment, I better turn it on because I've got something else that isn't storage that's going to
the bottlenecks always shift, right?
Right.
I'm sure I've mentioned it before, but the days of the 90s and early 2000s of PC building, and the games that would come out for the PC that would require yet a faster CPU, and it would never cut up. Now the CPU, I mean, scientifically, you could argue that the statement's not exactly true, but we haven't seen a whole lot of advances performance-wise in CPUs in the last decade.
Right.
Truly. GPUs, different story.
Well, yeah, everything's catching up now. I find it kind of ironic and hilarious. CPU, GPU gaming is, I think, where that's the most obvious. We got a Nintendo Switch, and I downloaded Doom, and I was playing that for a minute.
Ooh.
It's an old throwback there.
Now, are you talking the OG Doom or this new Doom?
The OG Doom.
Oh.
I didn't realize you didn't get any up-down. It was just right-left. You didn't get an up-down with that.
I remember that, the days of shareware.
Right? But taking a look at all of these games, and it's kind of annoying because everything's first person shooter, and then all of the cool games, air quotes, are 8-bit throwbacks where it's this
Mm-hmm.
blocky thing that's clunking along through the window, and you get more environmental and physics based stuff, but
It's total tangent, but I'm going to go there anyway because this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart, and I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that 8/16-bit era still forced a lot of your imagination to fill in the gaps.
yeah.
To basically fill in the detail that wasn't able to be done by the. So think of Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past,
Mm-hmm.
Final Fantasy VII. Now I've been playing that remake,
Mm-hmm.
and it is wonderful, and I'm appreciating the visual fidelity of it, and that's all wonderful and great, and the sound and everything, and yet it hasn't taken the shine off the original at all, and the MIDI music and everything else,
Right.
because it still evokes all that wondrous magic that if you compare them straight to straight, this thing looks like garbage.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not about that. That's not the whole story. It's what
It's
your mind does to fill in those blanks.
what I took it as was the like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. That was a thing for me when I was growing up, right?
Hmm.
And now I'm in my 30s and building stuff. So of course I'm gonna build the stuff that I enjoyed when I was a kid. That's kind of what I figured it
Did
was.
you build the Technodrome?
No, no, I did not necessarily.
Is that where you're going with that?
No, not necessarily that, but Final Fantasy as a remake, 8-bit gaming is the cool
Yeah.
thing that I grew up with as a kid. So now that
Mhm.
I'm the one that's working, I being
Yes.
us
Y-
30-year-olds,
Our
40-year-olds, us
generation are now the
generations are now the
creators.
creators. Yes, exactly.
Yep.
So
Yep. That's a really good way to put it. I hadn't thought about it like that, but I'm happy for it. I'm here
right,
for it.
right.
All
We're
right,
that
I'm gonna
demographic.
I'm going to pull this. I'm going to steer this guy back onto the tracks here. But we haven't really talked about Fiber Channel, and I know we hadn't really intended to go deep into it necessarily today. We're talking about more IP-based protocols, but Fiber Channel was the grand poobah, the granddaddy, and still, I mean, um, bit for bit, it is a lossless protocol, and
Right.
you won't get better performance on an equivalent IP stack versus Fiber Channel either. And I look at iSCSI when I talk about that, and I consider iSCSI to be IP-based fiber channel. That's not strictly true because we do have fiber channel over Ethernet, and that's not iSCSI.
Right.
But in terms of the model, what you have to think about with multipathing and
Exactly.
initiators, it's kind of an alternative version of that.
If you transpose the IQNs and the worldwide node names, or if you take those concepts, they all hold
Exactly.
across the board. The other one that I lean on a lot when I talk about iSCSI is that fabric. So if you're doing iSCSI, define a fabric A, and this is my entire fabric A, and it's all one standalone thing, and then fabric B, and it's all this one standalone thing over here. And then
Yeah, we've got the two switches in our data center, and a lot of times there's the temptation to just put all VLANs on both switches. That way we can have traffic everywhere and all over. For storage, resist that urge. If you've got your iSCSI A VLAN, your iSCSI B VLAN, have the A VLAN only live on the top switch. Have your B VLAN only live on the bottom switch, and that way you've truly got distinct paths that never the two shall cross over.
There's it's kind of interesting how that transposes to like uplink network redundancy for things like NSX tier 1 router, where I'm peering with an upstream device and I want to have a redundant leg A and a redundant leg B, right? So think of this. You get a UCS environment, you got your fabric interconnects. You've got a fabric interconnect A, fabric interconnect B. Those are basically fabric A, fabric B. But then out of those two interconnects, you've got a port channel to your uplink switches, and it crosses to both switches. And then you've got a port channel to the uplink switches, and it crosses to both. So you've got this really nice fabric going all the way up, and then you port channel it, and now everything's crossed. And you go,
right. It all gets dumped into the same pipe.
Exactly. So it's stuff like that that's that still to this day gives my brain a workout. I got to spend a minute drawing it out, talking about, okay, what happens if I kill this device? What happens if I shut down that device, right? That kind of a thing.
Yeah, and a lot of times what Cisco will tell you to do is, plug into the Fabric interconnects as appliance ports your storage.
Mm-hmm.
That's all well and good because you stay south of that port channel, right,
Mm-hmm.
for that
Exactly.
traffic. But I mean, oftentimes, a lot of times, multiple Fabric interconnects or UCS manager domains are going to access the same shared storage. You need that north. So and that's where one NFS could be a solution. But I wouldn't say you can still do it with iSCSI. It's just like you said, it requires the careful planning and all of that. But do you have a preference at this point?
For a storage protocol?
Yeah.
Going back to that question?
Yeah.
I like NFS because I don't have to do anything with the device that's initiating with the ESX host and formatting that VMFS volume and extending it and doing this and that and the other thing. I can grow and shrink it. Yeah.
If you could only choose one.
If
you're building a data center and you have to choose an array that only supports a single storage protocol, and it's iSCSI or NFS.
NFS.
Ooh, and I'm going to disagree. I'm going to say iSCSI.
Yeah?
Yep. I'll tell you why. It's not just about hypervisor.
No?
No. Okay, so now I've got a Microsoft SQL cluster. I've got a file services cluster. I have something that uses Microsoft clustering services or something where I want to present. Now, you can present NFS into a guest just as easily as you can present iSCSI into a guest.
Mm-hmm.
But I have found that, and I'm sitting on the fence here. I'm a pragmatist. Microsoft technically still does not support Microsoft Exchange running on NFS storage.
Okay.
I kid you not.
Okay.
And they say it's fine, but if you call in for support and something's wrong, they won't support you. I haven't found that to be true either. In all aspects, I have never had a problem with NFS. And have you ever? Go ahead and find me an example on the internet anywhere. I challenge you to say we experienced Microsoft Exchange Jet database corruption because of NFS storage. It just doesn't happen. It's just not a thing.
Right.
So that to me is pragmatic in terms of I'm not worried about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I've set up plenty of SQL clusters where iSCSI is a protocol of choice, and if you are only running NFS, that's a little different.
Yeah. I challenge you and say why. Like at that point, the place I go is to ask you for a definitive reason why you need to mount this iSCSI volume inside of the guest. Because at that point, you're hamstringing yourself in a couple of different ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
All of your snapshot backup stuff doesn't work anymore.
Yep.
So
that's true. But at the same time, and I don't like this answer either, but, well, Matt, my vendor, we just bought this $500,000 software product from, that's all they've certified.
Okay. Yeah. And that might be it. It might just be that.
I hate that answer.
I do too, but it's valid, right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, yet you have to go with it.
Mm-hmm.
The pain. How do you feel about routing storage? I mean, we're talking about a lot of layer 2 domain stuff, which is great when you have control over things or you have a relatively small environment, right? But what I've heard, kind of just a rule of thumb, is you do not want to route your storage. What's that about?
So I think that it's one of those things that we've never had to do, so we don't do it. I suspect it will be fine, and I suspect
I feel like it's the days of old where again the routers you don't want to route that many packets.
Right. When we're taking a look at a lot of the customers we've got, there isn't a need for rows and rows and rows of cabinets in a data center. There isn't a need for like a spine leaf architecture to support the networking for this environment. Once you step into that realm, I've got this massive data center with all of these interconnected rows of cabinets and spine leaf switches, and everything's huge, scaled to that level. I think you kind of have to. I expect to see 40 gig connectivity to the cabinets, 100 gig connectivity to the cabinets, and multi-100 gig connectivity to my storage cabinet. That kind of connectivity, and I truly believe that's the only way that would scale up to that size.
Right. But from a networking guy yourself, past, present, and future, how do you feel about the performance of your routing engine and level of bandwidth? You don't care?
No, because my switches and whatnot nowadays can route layer 3.
Line
My
rate,
layer
right?
3 switches can route at wire speed, yeah. So
we don't care, yeah.
it's a packet, right? Oh God,
All
it's
right.
scary because we haven't done it, but I don't see an issue. The thing that I think that lends itself to, though, at that scale is where the distributed storage actually comes in, and that's when we're talking about that.
I figured you'd dip your toe there. I was waiting for this.
That's in my mental model. That's where that makes the most sense. If I'm going to build
all right.
huge data centers, I'm going to do something like a vSAN across this cluster in this cabinet and this cluster in that cabinet, and that's how I'm going to present my 80-90% of my storage needs to most of my VMs using that. And then that really, really big database, that Exchange server that needs that direct iSCSI mount, can sit on my big, expensive storage array over here because it needs to be special for whatever reason. That's kind of where I'm thinking.
Are you still on about booting from SAN? I believe when I started here at Ivoxy, I went to a place where you may have worked prior.
In the back in the day.
To help them, and I said, "Who put this boot from SAN environment in?" That so because they had an issue and everything went over, and I go, "Well, you're booting from SAN, and your SAN this volume got pulled away, and now all your hosts something happened." I go, "Who put the what sorcerer put this?"
I may have done something cool because it was cool.
I believe your name may have come up in that conversation.
So for ESX, I want ESX to be as stateless, low touch, simple as I can make it. I'm this close. It's for me right now. It's more of an issue of is the time worth figuring out how to do IPMI network boot for an ESX host worth just installing ESX on these 4 servers? And it hasn't quite tipped yet, but eventually at that point, that's all I want.
It's a scale thing. It's got to be a scale thing. And and for me, 1 server, 2 server, 3 servers, 10 servers, 20 servers, it's not. I don't think it's necessarily how many you have. It's how many you have to scale or deploy on a regular basis. I think that's it.
I think that goes a couple of different ways. If it's right now, my lab's got 4 hosts in it, and at 4 hosts, I can have them rebuilt in a couple hours. So it's not that big of a deal.
Sure.
The benefit there is that, like, going from 6, 7 to 7, which I just did over the weekend, I get the ability to do a clean install. I don't have to bring anything else with. I don't have to worry about my NSX bits getting upgraded and then upgrading NSX and then. I can just boot to this new image and you're done, right? That's the goal that I like out of it. Is this is now, I don't really care what that hardware is. It's not anything that exists. I'm this close to saying let's DHCP all of the interfaces on every ESX server.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm a fan of just a little USB drive and loading the ESX on that. Outside of the fact that USB thumb drives are in general crap, they will fail.
But that kind of goes to that point. It's ESX, so it fails. Just drop a new USB drive in it. It's
right, and it doesn't even take the host down. It's just if you want to reboot it, you're gonna have to figure something out.
Right. Yeah.
Yep.
If it's a new server and I'm putting in storage for a new server, I'd lean towards USB as well.
Over the SD cards.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, I could kiss you. That's great. Thank goodness for social distancing, if never before. Certainly now.
It was kind of neat. Like I got to play with the UCS servers, and they've got those mirrored SD cards, and it's neat, but it didn't.
It sounds wonderful.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
It doesn't work that way. It's not so magic. And why is this Flex Flash controller alert showing up in ESXi? I haven't done a thing. Aren't you loving the redundant world that we live in? Yeah, just give me the stick and get out of the way.
There's a question of how much redundancy do you build into an environment. If I have 6, 8, 10 ESX hosts, do I really need that host to be n plus n plus n redundant to the host itself, right? If my boot drive fails on it, then I replace the boot drive, and it's one host out of my cluster that's gone.
Right. You evaluate where you want to protect against failures too.
Exactly.
It's like the idea of an entire cluster going down. I don't need to make that cluster redundant most cases in terms of in the data center, because guess what? If that cluster goes down, that's a power event. I have not clicked on a configuration where the entire cluster goes poof. I mean, you probably could get it working with NSX. You probably could make a party like that happen.
I could find you a nice little
but
hold a step
but I mean,
in there.
theoretically, we're talking about the loss of a host due to a PSOD, a purple screen, or hardware failure in a single host. At that point, HA does its thing. And the loss of the boot drive matters nothing in terms of operational, because it's just all loaded in RAM anyway.
Yeah.
So let's see. In terms of that, so the vote for you is NFS. I'm going to say iSCSI in terms of picking, and I will also say this: up to this point, and including now and going forward, I mean, NetApp specifically has been one of our biggest partners, and certainly the fact that it is a Swiss Army knife in terms of it's been a multi-protocol filer for a long time,
forever, yeah.
And they've been the best at it, really, too, because there are some other multi-protocol filers that, boy, well, they're NFS, their SMB implementations, not all that. I mean, turns out file systems, as basic and foundational as they are not an easy thing to implement, especially coexisting with other protocols. I mean,
I think
apparently that's the case.
I think when you get stuff like, do I want to run this multi-terabyte CIFS share off of this NFS or off of this storage device, that's really where I start to go, maybe not. Because of the number of unique things that are trying to talk to it. It's a little different when I've got X number of
and
the
enumeration
same
of a file tree with millions of files and things like that it is a mathematical computational problem. It's an issue that you have to deal with. But now it seems like even NetApp has their SAN model now, where it's out of the box optimized and working only with iSCSI or Fiber Channel. So it seems like a lot of storage vendors, I think in a bid for simplicity, have both in management and in engineering on their end, are only supporting block or file from that standpoint.
Yeah.
And so I think that choice now comes up more often because, hey, are you okay with iSCSI only or Fiber Channel only? Are you going to be all right with that? You have to make that decision, I think, maybe not more than before. I mean, but, early in Ivoxy's days, NetApp was 100% of our storage, partnerships. And now we've certainly diversified that, due to the industry and the market moving. But now a lot of the new arrays you buy might not give you that choice, and a lot of times I shrug my shoulders and say it's a trivial question.
It is, because if you've got redundant NFS connectivity, then by definition you should have redundant iSCSI connectivity. So at that point, what's it really matter, right? I will say that it's really fun, really nice to go do an iSCSI config, because there is a bunch of little fiddly bits to do with it. You make sure your port groups are set up, add your network adapters to your initiator groups.
Are you the same way? Is it oddly satisfying to go ahead and do your port bindings in the SXI once you've set up your iSCSI port groups and pin them to one NIC or the other, and then you go assign port bindings and you actually assign the VM kernel port to that port group, and it's got a nice big green compliant checkbox? Something about that is very satisfying to me, and
yeah,
I think I'm really weird.
I think I hear you. I think part of it might come from the fact that a lot of times I show up on like a customer site and, hey, my storage is acting funny. Well, let's go take a look at your iSCSI.
iSCSI's rammed in there.
Yeah, like, well, okay, we need to this right here. That's a problem. So it's that kind of bit, and it's
right.
It's yeah.
Well, I mean, we could go super deep into this. I think this is a good first swing at the topic. I think we could definitely follow up on these after. So let's move on to the real thing I want to talk about. How are you liking the Switch?
How am I liking the Switch?
And I mean the Nintendo Switch, not the Cisco Switch.
Ha ha ha. It's actually pretty cool. We took a drive over to Kitsap the other day, and we set it up in the truck while we're sitting on the ferry and played Mario Kart. So that's
like 2-player?
Yeah. So that's kind of neat. It's kind of small. The screen is kind of small for a 2-player. So like we've been playing Unravel 2, which we really like the two-player puzzle games.
Yep.
And it's a physics-based puzzle game type thing. But the screen is only like 8-9 inches or something. So we get up there and it's lean in and squint, and where am I supposed to shoot my little yarn thing so I can swing? I can't. Oh, it's that up there, right?
So obviously you're talking about the truck and the ferry.
Uh-huh.
Have you docked it to the TV yet? Is that a cool thing?
So that was actually what we'd been doing was we're playing Unraveled outside while like steaks are cooking on the grill or something. We can set it up on the counter right there and do a little thing. I can go up and flip a burger and go back. We got stuck on a level because we couldn't see quite where we needed to jump and do the thing. So we just hit pause and then brought it inside and plugged it into the TV.
I mean, that's cool.
Right? Yeah.
Well, I mean, I know you got it through with our coworker. He had a couple of bundles that were available for purchase, and I was going to jump in on it, thinking in my mind, oh, it's $300 is a Switch, right?
Mm-hmm.
Great. And these things are like aftermarket priced at this point, still, right? Because of the pandemic.
No, that was list price. It was that it had the extra controller and a game and a this and a that and a this and a that.
As I sit here next to my gold themed, and you're listening, so you can't see this, but I'm showing Matt. I've got the Zelda themed 3DS.
3DS, yeah, that's what it is.
It might be the 3DS XL, I think, technically, or the bigger. Yes, 3DS XL.
Mm-hmm.
And it came with basically the game. I didn't realize it until I bought this, or heard about it and then bought it. It's basically a Link to the Past.
Yeah.
But it's redone. It's not a complete like remake or just a remake where they just cosmetically things are different, but more or less it's 3 dungeons, and then you beat Agnaham or whatever, and then it's 7 dungeons, and then you get Ganon. And that was a lot of fun to play.
Yeah.
To this day, those Zelda games are the best.
Yeah.
I love those. But here's the thing. It's been sitting here. I may have played it for a total of, I don't know, 10 hours, 12 hours. And I'm just looking at it right now. And I lost the charger. Mm-hmm. And
it's got that
replacement.
It's got that weird plug on the back, right?
Of course, it's Nintendo. Do you think they're going to use something standard? But I went and bought a $7 charger just in case I ever wanted to dust it off again. And then I thought, do I really want to drop $500 on a Switch bundle? I mean, really, Matt. I mean, if I'm going to drop $500, I'm going to buy that NBA Jam arcade cabinet. Oh yeah.
So on the plus side, you can't take that with you camping. You can't, and that was really the selling point.
Hold my beer.
It's you can slip it in the backpack, right, and take it with you, that kind of a thing. I will say the connectivity on the Switch is all USB-C, which is super cool. So all of our existing chargers and everything will charge it up. The one thing that's the most annoying bit is it's got a spot for a SD card. So I'm like, all right, cool. Let's toss a couple of movies on there because it's a screen. We can play it. No playing media off the SD card. The App Store is kind of locked down. There's Netflix and YouTube and Hulu, but that's it. So
and that does you no good camping.
Right. Well, right.
I'm assuming you can't download movies locally, like you cache them. Like
if it's off of Netflix or YouTube, I think you could, but
okay.
But at that point, then it's got to be on Netflix and YouTube, and is it?
Yep.
That's a whole different question. So it's that.
I continue in my journey with Final Fantasy VII Remake. I just beat the Hell House, and that was the boss battles are incredibly difficult in that game, which is on the line for me. And I know we'll wrap up here soon, but it's on the line for me because I like video games. I grew up playing them, but repetition. I hate wasted effort, and it's not
go
wasted.
Here, shoot
it's a
this
game,
thing.
Right?
Go here, pick up 10 of these.
Well, no, it's here. Have this 30-minute boss battle, only for him to whack you when he has 1% life left, and then you're dead. You have to start over. I hate that. I know that's like anthema to a video game, right? But repeating the same boss over and over again and finally beating him. I don't like that. I dread that. Now that I beat him, I've kind of put the game down for a week or two just to be like, oh, I got past it. Now I don't have to worry about beating the guy before I can move on.
Our thing over the last month or two, month and a half, has been Halo. I have never played so much Halo.
The OG?
I stopped playing Halo in the middle of Halo 2.
I picked up it on 3. I picked it up on 3.
Played through the first one, played halfway through the second one, and then other stuff happened, and I never got back to it.
So what are you playing Halo on?
So Halo Master Chief Edition, we downloaded to the Xbox because it's free with Game Pass.
Oh, yeah.
So we played through Halo 1, Halo 2.
I didn't know you had Xbox.
3,
I have that Master Pack, too.
For all of them. And I tell you, at the end of, what was it? At the end of 4, that last section where you're flying the plane, I had to stand up in front of the TV because my old man eyes couldn't make out the...
Oh, my goodness.
Where am I flying? Oh, God, crash, boom. Crap. And then because it's multiplayer, you have to restart at the beginning of the chapter. If you don't finish the chapter, that's kind of annoying.
Yeah, video games are one of those things, again, big part of my youth, and it's one of those things that I want to like more than I actually do.
Mm-hmm.
I sit down and other stuff gets my attention. If I'm going to have free time,
there's only so much video gaming I can do.
Yeah. I wish I could relax that way a little bit more because I really do enjoy it, and I'm allowing myself that indulgence with Final Fantasy VII, which is it was just a huge part. The sound, the music, all that. I just grabbed the 8-disc soundtrack for the first part of the remake, which is ridiculous.
Nice.
It's really good, so check that out too. All right, Matt, you got anything else? You got any other protocols, grenades to throw in here before we wrap?
No,
I know, me either. But it was good. I'm looking forward to diving deeper into it as we go. But if you have a preferred storage protocol or a really strong reason why you feel that way, hit us up on Twitter. We're on LinkedIn, Instagram, or podcast@ivoxy.com also. If you haven't yet subscribed to this podcast, shame on you, and you should do so on iTunes or Google Play.
Smash that subscribe button.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is it Google Podcast now? Of
you
course
keep
they've
asking. I don't remember. I don't know. I don't actually listen to podcasts.
Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Overcast. I've switched from Overcast back to the Apple Podcasts app only because of sync between my iPad and my... Anyway, you can find us at ivoxy.com. Check out the show notes for all the pertinent links. Once again, thank you for listening to yet another episode of Data Center Therapy. On behalf of Mr. Coslino, I'm Matt Yeti. Thanks for listening, everyone. Have a great day.